Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar today. Thank you for spending some of your very valuable after school time with us during the webinar today. My name is Matt Jacobson. I am the online learning coordinator for the Learning Technology Center of Illinois. I'd like to remind everyone that we are recording this webinar today. We do post our recordings on YouTube within 24 to 48 hours. All mics and cameras are muted, and we'll leave them that way until the end of the webinar, where you can unmute yourself if you choose. Illinois PD credit is available for those attending our webinar live today. Evaluations will be emailed to our live participants also within 24 to 48 hours as well. If you have any questions today, please type those into the chat or the Q&A. If you use the chat, please make sure you change that little blue drop-down menu from host and panelist to read everyone, so that we can all read your questions and benefit from the responses. Today, I am very pleased to introduce everyone to a new friend of mine, Lindy Hockenbary, who will be sharing a few ways to engage our students virtually as well as in person. Lindy, I think you can share your screen. Go ahead and unmute yourself and you can take it away.
All right, thanks, Matt. And let me get my screen shared here. There we go. Thanks everyone for joining, and I appreciated you sharing where you're from. I love the diversity across Illinois, everywhere from Chicago area to way down by St. Louis. So that was really interesting to see. I had a map up here. I was plugging in the different towns to see where everyone is from. So we are going to talk all about engaging students with research-based strategy. Research-based strategies today. My name is Lindy, as Matt said. I help teachers. So I taught middle school and high school. By random life happenings, ended up working more in the professional development, technology integration side, and loved it and stayed. So that's what I do now. So I help teachers improve instructional practice, use technology as a learning tool, and make sure that that is really purposeful and we're integrating it into our curriculum in a purposeful way to advance learning. I do a lot of education training, a lot of educational technology training, do speaking events, and I'm an education author as well. I live in Bozeman, Montana, so I am in the southwest corner of the state, not quite where that little pin is at, a little more southwest, about an hour and a half from Yellowstone National Park, and we are having a horrid winter storm right now. Schools were canceled today. Schools are canceled tomorrow. The wind is awful. We're not getting it as bad here as other places in the more east in the state, but it is not nice. So let me know how the weather is in Illinois. I think I saw that you guys are supposed to be getting some bad weather coming, because of course it's heading east from me onto you. I don't know if you'll get it as bad as we are. Let's see, some other information about me. I try to make myself very diverse in the EdTech field. So I have lots of different EdTech certifications. And I always just tell people I'm like an instructional technologist extraordinaire, because I do so many different things in the instructional technology realm. My website is linked here, and I've got it at the end of the slides as well. And you can find me on socials at Lindy Hockenbary on the various socials. If you search that, you will find me and connect with me, and I would love to connect with you as well. Let's see, it is overcast in Western Illinois, thunderstorms later tonight. That sounds better than what I have going on right now outside my window, like horrid wind, low visibility. We haven't got a ton of snow, but the wind is so bad that it's blowing the snow and creating low visibility. So that's fun. All right. I am going to use a Pear Deck in this session to have you be able to interact with me, give me feedback, share your ideas and information. So if you will navigate to joinpd.com, Matt just put that in the chat. So join P as in pair, D as in deck.com. It will take you, let me open this guy up, to a screen, and you can do this on any device, by the way. You can do it on your phone. If you have a tablet, more of a computer type device. And then once you get there, you're going to enter this code. It's all lowercase letters. So GEDGBM. That's an easy one. Sometimes there's like, O's and I's in there that confuse people. So all lowercase letters, GEDGBM. There we go. I see some people connecting here.
And Lindy, while folks are connecting, I would like to let you know, a lot of times we'll have folks join our webinar on their drive home from school. So if you're driving home, you can just listen along, and we'll include a link to the slide deck in the YouTube description after it's posted in a day or two.
Perfect. Yes, please don't do Pear Deck while you're driving. I do not endorse that behavior. Putting that out there. I do have a link at the end of the session as well to just the slides, if you want just the slides. And as Matt said, they'll put it with the YouTube video as well. All right, we've got 5 people connected. So I'm going to assume we are good here. I'm curious if you can add into the chat. Let me know if you've used Pear Deck before, if you've either used it with your students, or maybe you've used it in a learning capacity, in a professional development or training. All right, moving on. So now that we're in the Pear Deck, you can still look at my slides and see the slides that I'm showing. This is exactly the same view, well, a little bit different than the view you'll see on your Pear Deck side. And then you can open up, you can have another screen with the Pear Deck going. You can look at one or the other, right? You can still look at my slides if you want, but everything I'm going to show here is going to be on your Pear Deck view plus more. And then that's where you can interact with me. So this is an interactive slide. You'll see an orange dot on the slide, and you can drag that dot around. So I want to know, how is everybody doing today on this scale of cow? What is your mood? I know I'm hilarious. So the reason I picked a cow scale was because I live in Montana, and little tidbit for you, Montana has more people than cows. No, more cows than people. We're the 3rd state. So it's Nebraska, no, South Dakota, then Nebraska, and then Montana, I believe, for like the cows to people ratio being more cows than people. So there you go. Jody says, you used Pear Deck the first time yesterday. Oh, wow, you love it. Matt loves Pear Deck as well, and Nearpod. So yeah, if you've ever used Nearpod, Nearpod is super similar to Pear Deck. They're basically like, one has a few features, the other one doesn't, and this one has a few features, this one doesn't, type of thing, but they're the same exact idea. I actually just finished going through the Pear Deck certified coach training last week. So I learned a lot of new little tidbits about Pear Deck. And this is really cool. Watch this. I can hit the show responses button, and we can see where everybody's at. Oh, we're all over the place. Oh, we got 2 on 5. I love that we have 2 people on 5. That's like, oh, we got 3 people on 5. I love that one. Kind of just a goofy, like post-school feel. We got some tired cows, a goofy cow down at 9, and a hungry cow, that post-school hunger coming in. I had a session yesterday that I did this and the same scale, and it was right over lunch. And so everyone was either hungry or tired or both. So it's pretty funny. All right, so now you've got an idea of how Pear Deck works. You can see how the draggable slides work. There are different types of interactivity. So depending upon the interactivity of the slide, I'll tell you, you can type, you can draw, you can drag, whatever type of slide that is. All right, now I would like to know, this is another draggable slide. What position are you? And you might fall in multiple categories here, but where would you say you mostly fall under? So far, we've got all teachers, but one other. If you can, the person that's other, tell me in the chat what your other position is. Oh, and one technical person. Great. So yeah, and I know, like, if you're an instructional coach, you might be a instructional technology coach, and school lead. If you're like a tech director, you might be both technical and a school leader. So just pick which one kind of fits best with you. So mostly teachers, one technical and one other. And then for fun, we are nearing up on summer vacation. Woohoo. It really isn't that far away. So let me know, you can drag your little dots and tell me, what's your favorite vacation? Are you a beach person, a mountain, a city, a cruise, and other? So far, we got a lot of beach people and other. Oh, that's right, Matt. Okay, yeah, Matt was my other in the previous slide. Online learning coordinator. Great. All right, so beach is definitely winning. We got a couple mountains and a couple others. Add into the chat if you're an other, what type of vacation is your favorite? if I had to choose, I would probably choose beach as well. Although I really love international trips where I get to experience different cultures. So we actually just booked a trip to Roatan this summer, which is an island off of Honduras. So we're going to get both the beach and the culture. So I'm like, hey, it's my thing. Double bang for your buck. There we go. All right, moving on. So learning goals for the session, we are going to look at 3 different areas that research identifies as key factors to increase student engagement. We're going to identify strategies then within those 3 areas that you can use to help increase student engagement. So you're going to get a little bit of research and a little bit of strategies walking away from today. I am, like, as I mentioned, an author. I have a book about online learning. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today in the strategies is in my book, as well as the research and such. So I'm going to do a drawing for my book. So on your Pear Deck, it should automatically pop up the Google form. If you give me your name, email, tell me if you want the Kindle ebook or the paperback copy. If you want the paperback, make sure to give me your address, your mailing address. I'll stop for a second and let everybody complete that. And then we will draw at the end of the session, must be present to win. Thanks, Matt. Matt says he has a copy and it's a great book. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, here we go. We got some people coming in. Gotta love giveaways. I like giving away free stuff on what is today? I almost said Wednesday afternoon. It's not Wednesday, it's Tuesday. I know what day it is. Okay. So got some numbers coming in here. I'll just give it another 30 seconds. Okay, it stopped. So I think we're good. I will just, for good measure, if you missed the link from the Pear Deck, put it in the chat as well. So you can always click it from there. All right, moving on. Let's get into our content here. So I want to ask you, how do you know if students are engaged? And this is a writing question. So it'll have a little spot for you to type in your answer. And let me know, how do you know if your students or students in your school, if you're a school leader, are engaged? And you can just provide one idea. I know there's lots of different ideas out there, but you can just add one idea. I'm going to flip over to our show responses view. I'm going to make this bigger too. There we go. You see them on the Zoom screen? Question mark? So like you're questioning, is this how you know if they're engaged? Active participation, absolutely. If they're participating in a discussion, they give you just participation, right? Like you can just tell if they're engaged or not if they're participating. If they're sitting there like lumps on the logs, they're probably not engaged, right? When I hear students in discussion and attempting diagrams, models, etc. Yeah, so lots of displaying on-task behavior. I like that. Face, body language, right? That was why when COVID shutdowns happened and we moved virtual, a lot of teachers struggled with, if the kids didn't turn on their video, even if they do turn on their video in virtual, you can't really tell their body language in a virtual. So that's hard. And you have to think of other ways to gauge engagement, right? Other than body language. Okay, great. So just to kind of frame our conversation on engagement today, I pulled this cool infographic, and I know you can't see that very well on here. So I'm going to flip. You do have the link to download it is on the slide. So you can click that link later, open it. And by the way, all of the links that are in the Pear Deck, if you click the link, it will open in another tab, and then it will save that link for you for later. As I said, I'm also going to share the slide deck out. So all the links are in the slide deck as well. So that's different ways that you can get the information. So here is the infographic in a slightly bigger view. So this was a study where they asked teachers, what are the top 3 signs of student engagement? A lot of things of what you guys said. So on-task behavior, participating in class discussions. But then there's some really interesting ones in here. Like for example, let me find it, discipline problems are minimal. This actually fits within Schlechty's work. If you're familiar with Schlechty's levels of engagement, he talks about how you have, if a student is off task, then they're either retreating or rebelling. And retreating, you're going to get off task behavior. Rebelling, you're going to get off task behavior, and they're causing disruptions, right? And then, so that's kind of moving down the engagement scale. So absolutely, that discipline problems are a sign of lack of engagement, whether we like it or not. There are some subjective signs here. There are some objective signs here. It's been kind of known throughout education history that engagement's hard to measure, but there are a few objective things here, like test scores improving, grades improving, tardies and attendance rates are low, right? Or sorry, tardiness rates are low, attendance rates are high. There we go. So some objective measures like that. I just thought this was really interesting to kind of frame our conversation around engagement. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take and we are going to break down engagement and look at what does the research actually tell us affects student engagement. What does the research say helps increase student engagement? I hear a whole lot of talk about engagement, especially in a COVID / maybe post-COVID world. We'll just say COVID world, right? One of the biggest issues, almost every school I've talked to, they've said our biggest issue is engagement. Getting students engaged. They're just so disengaged, right? And then that causes discipline issues and off-task behavior and on and on and on and on and on. So there's lots of ideas out there about how to increase student engagement, but what does research actually say does increase engagement is what I want to look at today. So Newsela, and let me know in the chat if you use Newsela. I love Newsela's tools, but if you don't know, they have some really cool learning science behind their products that explain like why their products are designed the way that they are. And I'm not endorsed or accredited by Newsela in any way, so you know that. I just really like their products and I love their research behind their tools. So they have done a ton of work and they have kind of created what they call the learning sciences, or the learning sciences behind Newsela, that really explain and summarize the research behind engagement, student engagement, really well. So I've given you several sources and links throughout here to different like Newsela pieces that summarize a lot of the research. I'm going to give you a lot of like research tidbits throughout here. I have some links in the slides, and then at the end of the slides, there's 3 slides that have all of the research citing, the citations for the research articles that I'm noting throughout the product. Newsela is great, love Newsela, awesome. Yeah, I love Newsela as well. It's a great tool. So this link on this slide, if you follow it, is a good kind of summary about Newsela's learning science research and what they say affects engagement. So interestingly enough, they say engagement is the behavioral manifestation of motivation. There's your definition of engagement. Academic performance can only occur if students are actively engaged in learning. I want you to sit with that for a second. Let me repeat that. Academic performance can only occur if students are actively engaged in learning. That's what the research supports. So I feel like there's this idea in education that, you know, it doesn't really matter if kids are engaged. We're just going to force them to learn. They just have to sit there and deal with it and do their class time and get their work done, right? And they're going to learn something and they're going to do well on their tests. The research shows that that's not what happens. If kids aren't engaged, not just kids, anybody, if people aren't engaged, they're not going to learn. Engagement is directly linked to achievement. Without engagement, you don't have achievement. So talking about increasing student achievement, on the path to increasing student achievement, we have to increase student engagement. And Newsela has this really good graphic here that kind of illustrates that process of like engagement, the correlation between engagement and achievement. And that is a pretty consistent finding in educational research. So when it comes to learning, here's the summary of that previous slide. Engagement's really important. And I think we all know that, especially now after, you know, we went through COVID, we all know that, but it really is super important. So what I've done is I've taken and looked at a lot of different research on student engagement, and I've broke it down and made these 3 buckets. Now, I want to reinforce that this is not comprehensive. Okay, we don't have time to talk about everything that the research says affects engagement, increases engagement, I should say, positively affects engagement. These are just 3 things that are really pretty easy things to do and implement. So bucket number 1 is this idea of belonging or belongingness. Students are going to want to feel that they belong and feel a sense of personal comfort and support. Bucket number 2 is self-efficacy. Will I be successful at the learning task? And then bucket number 3 is value. Is doing the learning task worth it to me? So I'm going to break down each one of these buckets. We're going to look at some research and then some strategies of how you can work to increase student engagement within each of these engagement buckets, quote unquote. And just remember, again, this is not comprehensive. For example, if I were to add another bucket to my engagement buckets, I would add metacognition is a big one for increasing student engagement and the importance of students understanding how they learn. So that would be an example of a 4th bucket I would add here if it was comprehensive. So let me know, drag your little, I think it's a circle. Oh, no, oh, that's right. Sorry, I had to remember what I did here. So you're going to see 3 icons on the slides. There's a green up, thumbs up, a yellow circle, and a red flag. You don't have to use all of them, but just let me know. Are there any of these buckets that you just look at without knowing anything else? And you're like, oh, I'm doing a really good job of that. Or my school's doing a really good job of that. Drag that green circle. Or sorry, green thumbs up. If there's a bucket where you feel like you or your school or your district as a whole is not doing very well with, you can drag the red flag. If you're kind of like, well, we're doing okay, but we could do better, you could drag the yellow circle. Okay. Interesting. You can see the little guys moving here. I'm very interested that there's a lot of green thumbs up in the middle bucket of self-efficacy. I guess I would not have predicted that. When I've done this, I've never done this exact session, but kind of similar sessions before. I feel like that's always a big spot where people are like, oh yeah, we can do better there. So that's really interesting to me. All over the place in belongingness, kind of all over the place in value. So still got some little guys moving around here. Interesting. Okay. Well, that gives me a good idea of maybe where to spend a little more and a little less time on as we talk about each of these today. So let's start with bucket number 1. Bucket number 1 is this idea of belonging or belongingness. Do I belong here? Do I feel a sense of purpose, personal comfort, and support? So let's now break down the research around this bucket. So what does the research say about how belonging and a sense of belongingness affect student engagement? Students are more likely to be academically engaged when they feel that they belong. Seems like it should be a fairly common, like it should just be something that we know, but I don't think that we maybe do a lot of times in education. And I think that this became a huge surprise to a lot of schools when school buildings shut down because of COVID, right? I've heard a lot of schools say, like, wow, we really had to up our SEL game, right? Our social emotional learning game, which is this bucket, right? Social emotional learning is this belongingness bucket. This includes both having caring and supportive relationships with peers at school, as well as adults. Okay, so start to think about your school and notice or observe whether both kids have good relationships and kids have good relationships with the adults in the school building, their teachers, their office staff, the school administrators, etc. This also includes in the research, it specifically talks about receiving encouragement. And encouragement is a really big thing in the research to add to this belongingness bucket. Creating personal connections with students is critical to the learning process in any learning environment. So it does not matter if the learning environment is face-to-face, if it's virtual, blended, hybrid, what other crazy models we have out there nowadays, right? It doesn't matter. This is important across the board. Students have to feel like they belong. Teacher interaction with students is very clearly linked in the research to student achievement. And remember that student achievement is linked to engagement, right? So that teacher relationship is super critical to student learning and student engagement. Now, any of you, let me know in the chat if any of you work with virtual students, or maybe you have a blended or hybrid model where you have your students maybe partially in person, but then they're also virtual in some way, shape, or form, because this is interesting in terms of the idea of belongingness and virtual students, that virtual students are way more apt to remain active in their classes if they feel a sense of community. That sense of community is really important, extra important in virtual, because they don't have the physical building to walk into and the classroom to walk in the door, right? Virtual teachers have to find new ways to express emotion and make connections. And I think a lot of teachers figured that out, right? When they had to make that emergency switch to virtual, you can't rely on the same things like body language in virtual that you can in face-to-face, or just looking at a kid and assessing their physical appearance and then in terms of their well-being, right? You have to find other ways to do that in virtual settings. All right. Moving on, now let's talk about strategies. So that was the research, what the research tells us. Now let's look at some strategies about how you can help students feel a sense of belonging in order to then increase their engagement, to then increase their achievement, right? So here is another right slide. Let me know what strategies you currently employ to create a sense of belonging in your classroom, in your school, if you don't have your own classroom, in your district, if you're a district leader. I don't think we had any leaders on the call, but in case anybody hopped on, that's more of a school leader. I'm going to flip over to our responses. Breakout rooms, yeah. So if you're virtual, using breakout rooms, or if you're in person doing small group work, right? And making sure you're mixing up those groups. Don't let students always choose their groups, right? You get cliques starting to form and that sense of community can kind of fizzle. So do random groups. Playing games, having downtime to just get to know each other. Love it. You have to make this time. You have to make time within your class period to just get to know your students. There are ways that you can integrate that into your learning outcomes and instructional strategies for sure, but you have to make time for it. Love playing games. Playing games is such a great way to build relationships in your classroom with your students. Discussion boards in an online space. If you haven't, use Flipgrid. So if you are teaching virtually, it's a great tool for in person too, but I'm just noting the discussion boards in an online space. Flipgrid it's a video kind of like discussion board. So it's video based. So it makes it feel like you're seeing and hearing each other synchronously, but you're not. So that's just another little tool to throw out there. During breakfast, I always ask students about their interests outside of school. Just converse with them, right? Just talk with them. In my book, I have a chapter on teaching students with disabilities and special needs virtually, and I had a couple different special ed teachers share their experiences, and one of them literally just said, I talk to my kids. That's how I increase engagement and develop relationships. I talk to them, right? If they have a relationship with me, they don't want to disappoint me, right? So that's amazing, just what talking can do. Lots of ideas here. Games, getting to know each other outside of class. Yeah, great ideas. All right, moving on. So I kind of made this graphic to help teachers think about these 3 different areas that you really need to focus on in terms of creating that sense of belonging. So you need to develop relationships with your students, right? One-on-one, just you and the students, right? Think about that research that talked about teacher interaction with students. You also need to create personal connections between students in the class. And then you need to develop a sense of community in your class. So by taking and breaking these down into these 3 sections, you can really start to think about, okay, what do I need to do to make sure these things happen? So some ideas based upon research. Interestingly enough, there's some research that shows that teacher-created videos increase student participation, student satisfaction, and this one is just super interesting to me, can help develop a quasi-relationship between teacher and student. Okay, so let that sit for a second. There is a specific research study out there that shows that instructors who created their own videos were able to engage their students even more than they could engage their students in face-to-face courses. So this was a specific online learning study that found this. So these were teachers, instructors that were only teaching online, and they were teaching a class online and a class in person. They looked at engagement for both and found that engagement in the online classes was actually higher. And one of the major factors was due to the videos that the teacher created. Research shows that the teacher trumps quality when it comes to videos. So yes, going to YouTube and Khan Academy and wherever else and finding amazing videos is important, and you can use those videos in certain places, but good old teacher created videos that aren't fancy actually trump high quality made videos. This is interesting. The research shows that if the teacher seems enthusiastic and upbeat on the video, that definitely matters more than quality. So like students would rather have a video of their teacher being upbeat and explaining whatever concept or instructions than have like a professionally made video by a stranger. Shorter videos increase engagement. The sweet spot is about 30 seconds to 3 minutes is the sweet spot for the most engagement with videos. So keep that in mind. So here's my strategy. Based on all of that research of what research tells us for how important belonging is to engagement, and then all of the research about videos and how videos can create a quasi student-teacher relationship, increase satisfaction, participation, right? The strategy, and this is an interesting one, this always throws people for a loop. They're like, wait, I'm talking about belongingness, I'm telling you to make videos. Create short, informal videos that have your voice and your face. Okay, because remember, the teacher trumps quality. And whenever I share this with teachers, they automatically are like, I don't have time to create videos. I'm not telling you to create the YouTube style videos. I'm just telling you, turn on your webcam. You can use a screencasting tool and share your screen if you need to show something, right? And just talk. No, nothing fancy. You don't have to have fancy lighting and fancy microphones and equipment, right? Nothing fancy, just talk. And then they say, but what about, I can't create a video for like every single lesson. No, you can't. Most likely, like it would take a long time, right? So this doesn't mean that you still can't use those Khan Academy and YouTube and wherever else you're getting videos from, right? I was just talking to my local school district the other day, and they use, oh darn, I can't remember it, but they have like a specific math curriculum that has all of the videos made for them. I wish I could think of the name at the moment, but anyway, doesn't matter. You can still use those, but I tell teachers always lead the lesson with a video of you, even 30 seconds to a minute. Hey guys, it's Mrs. Hockenbary. Want to tell you what you're going to learn today. You're going to learn about X, X, and X, and you're going to do this. The end, right? Think of it like when you're in the physical classroom and you stand up in front of the room and you say, all right, or you're in a Zoom meeting, right? This is what you're going to do today, right? Just do that via video. And it doesn't matter if you're teaching in person, blended, hybrid, online. You can post that, and now you're personalizing learning on top of it because students can now work at their own pace, right? So some ideas of what you can use inside like the content of your videos. Like I just explained, like the introduction of a lesson, instructions, content, although I will say those are probably the hardest and most time-consuming videos to make. So I always recommend that if you can outsource those videos and focus on these other things. If you need to, create a little pep talk video, right? And post it in your learning management system for your kids. Instead of writing feedback, make a video of feedback. So now instead of just giving your scribble feedback, your students are getting a video of you explaining to them how they need to advance their learning. So why don't you add into this slide, what ideas do you have? Do you have other ideas for content that you could create in your classroom via videos? I'll flip over to the responses here. So I gave you a few ideas: content, instructions, pep talks, lesson introductions. I'm a big fan of lesson introductions via video. It also saves you time as a teacher, because guess what? If there's a kid gone that day, just send them the video. It's all there, right? All the instructions are there. Role play simulations, reflecting on the reading from a prior day. So maybe they had a homework assignment to do reading. Exit tickets, interesting. Explain what you mean by video via exit ticket, like the student creates the video for their exit ticket. Announcements, love it for announcements. I always follow, like I'll make a video of an announcement and then add the text below it. So like say in your learning management system, you have an announcement, there's the text of it and then a little video. So you're adding two different inputs, right? Depending upon if your learners are more auditory, more visual, both, if they need to get it in both inputs, right? Oh yes, okay, so having the students do video as an exit ticket, interesting, I like that. Tell us 3 things you learned in class today. Videos of you pop up to explain what's going on. Yeah, so kind of any of those like instructional type videos. I know one of my biggest pet peeves as a teacher is repeating myself over and over again. You guys never have to do that, right? Like repeat yourself just over and over again. So make it a video, and then the student can replay it as many times as they want, and you don't have to repeat yourself. And what that does is I also tell teachers, this is a way, video is a great way to duplicate yourself as a teacher. If there's anything that about every teacher in the world has in common right now, it's that none of us have enough time, and we are being asked to do more and more and more, right? And our plates are over full. They're not even full, they're over full. So you have to find ways to save time, and video is a great time saver, because then it allows you to do things in class, right? Kind of like the flip model, but not quite. You could do the flip model, but it doesn't have to be. All right, moving on. So that was strategy number 1. Create videos. Let me know. You can drag your little circle to the tool that you use. If you use a tool for creating video, if you use Screencastify, Loom, Flipgrid, Screencast-O-Matic, maybe there's another tool I don't have listed here. If you choose other, add into the chat what tool you use for video creation. Interesting, we got 2 Looms, 1 other. No one chose Screencastify, which super surprises me. I thought we'd have a lot of Screencastify users in a heavy Google state. Oh, explain, is that like explain everything, Jennifer? Explain EDU? Another Loom. Yes, okay, so explain everything. Love explain everything. I used to use that a lot on the iPad several years ago. Used to do lots of iPad stuff. Oh, we got 1 Flipgrid. No Screencastify, huh? That's super interesting. I don't know why, I just assumed that there'd be a lot of Screencastify users here. If you haven't used Screencast-O-Matic, they have a really cool new feature called ScreenPal. And it's kind of, it's like not an extension, but kind of an extension. I guess you'd call it an extension. And it adds this little pop-up, and anywhere that you can insert text, any web page, Google Docs, wherever on the web, you hit this little button, it pops up a video recorder, you record, you hit done, and it puts the link to the video wherever it is that you insert text. It's really, really cool. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Matt. He put the link in the chat. Screencastify recently moved us all from free to freemium, lots of lost users. That makes sense. Okay, now I know why everybody went to Loom. All right, moving on. So if you don't have a video creation tool that you use, if you haven't created videos before, all of these are really great options. If you're feeling like I just can't add 1 more tool to my teacher toolbox, I'm on tool overload right now, especially like technology tool overload, then I say if you've got to know how to use a video conferencing tool like Zoom, we're on Zoom right now, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, open up a Zoom, share your screen and hit record. Boom. you got an instant screencasting video, right? And you're not having to learn another tool. With Google Meet, your school has to pay for the version that allows you to record. So just keep that in mind. Your school may or may not have that. But that's like a nice little workaround. Also, Flipgrid, a lot of people don't realize that Flipgrid has a screen recording tool built into it. So that's a really nice tool. If you want to get like a double bang for your buck of a screencasting tool, video creation tool on top of a tool that you can use with your students to record video, Flipgrid's a really good option, and it's completely free. So, oh, Jen uses WeVideo. WeVideo is another good one. I know a lot of schools that use WeVideo. I did not put that one on here, but it is a good one. Okay, moving on. So let me ask you this. I mentioned earlier, that you can focus on relationship building and have it be integrated as part of the stuff that you're already doing in your class. It doesn't have to be one more thing. So I'm curious if you have ideas of how you could integrate relationship building into your teaching without it becoming one more thing. Let's see if any ideas come in here. No one? Nothing? I have tons of ideas. One, while I'm waiting for responses, I'll just start giving ideas. One thing I like to do is just post in your learning management system. If you have like an announcements type of stream, if you use Google Classroom, it's called Stream. Canvas has its own little announcement area. If you use Schoology, it has its own kind of announcement area. Post questions in there that prompt your kids to share and learn. I found that no matter what age of kid or adult, everybody likes to talk about food, music, vacations. I did a vacation question with you, right? Pets or animals are always good topics of conversation. So I have a lot of little like questions under my belt, like anything regarding food that's like a food that is really, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like pineapple on pizza. Like you either love it or you hate it, right? Cilantro, soapy, not soapy. So little things like that, like add those questions and embed them into your learning management system. You're not adding additional time. You're just giving one more place to get to know your kids and your kids to get to know each other and get to know you, right? I also really stress to teachers, your students have to know you. They have to know you as a teacher and their teacher, but they also need to know you as a person. To a certain extent, you don't have to overshare, but like I like to talk about my dogs. I have 3 dogs. They're all right here. Currently, we bought, I'll show you, hold on. We bought my 13-year-old dog this little tent for Christmas, and 2 of them are having like a battle over the tent, and it's hilarious. Like one will run in there and then the other will stand there and stare at the one in the tent, so I tell little stories like that for them to get to know me. I use my dogs a lot. If you have kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, right? I do a stupid question of the day. Love it. So like it could even just be random facts, like it's a digital bell ringer. Get to know you icebreakers. Yeah, kind of that idea like I was talking about. As a history teacher, what would you have done in this situation? Interesting. So that would be like a question you would prompt to your students. Joke of the day, puzzle of the day, love joke of the day. Love it. Or even just joke of the week, right? You could have like a dad joke of the week in your classroom and you could put it on a bulletin board just to prompt conversation. Would you rather questions? There's actually a would you rather app, just FYI. I know it's on iPhone. I don't know about Android. My nieces love that one. My daughter's school did, but be the principal for the day. Love it. All right, lots of good ideas. We better move on to bucket number 2 before I completely run out of time here. I just love talking about belongingness. So I could go on and on about that bucket. So bucket number 2, almost all of you said like you feel like you're doing a really good job with this, like those green thumbs up. Self-efficacy is this idea of students will ask themselves before they go into a learning task if they think they're going to be successful or not. And if they feel that they're not going to be successful, what's going to happen? They're going to disengage, right? They're going to just check out, right? If I feel that I'm not going to be successful, I'm just going to check out. So the research refers to this as expectancies. I kind of change it to self-efficacy because I think that makes a lot more sense to teachers than expectancies, which sounds very like economic-y, right? But it's this idea that do students expect that they can do an academic task? This is a big driver to student engagement and achievement. is their expectancy for success. So self-efficacy is this idea that do learners believe they're going to succeed, right? Let's see, a little bit more research about expectancies or self-efficacy. Providing choice in the learning tasks and academic work that they do results in higher perceived competence and academic achievement. Okay, so hold that thought there. Choice. If students, now this one's interesting, if students don't know how to access or organize their learning tasks, they are less likely to engage in the task. Think about that for a second. If students can't find their work, especially now with everything being posted in a learning management system online, right? They're going to disengage, especially virtual kids. If you have full virtual kids, like if they go in and they try to find what they're supposed to do that day and they can't, bloop, what are they going to do? Shut that lid and walk away. And you can't do anything about it as a teacher. Instructional supports and scaffolding are really important in increasing self-efficacy. That's probably not a huge surprise. Increased perseverance when schoolwork gets challenging. So that's kind of what we want to build, is that perseverance, right? To say, like, if I do hit a challenging point, do I have the resources to be able to help myself through that challenging point without disengaging? So some strategies for self-efficacy. I wanted to know everybody, almost everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, there were like 4 or 5 green thumbs up in the self-efficacy bucket at the beginning. So what strategies do you currently employ to help develop that self-efficacy in your students, so that when they go into a learning task, they don't disengage, they persevere forward? So add your ideas in here. Anybody? Anybody? Something coming in? Oh, here comes something. Okay. Sometimes I get impatient with Pear Deck. Like, should be showing me something. Someone should be typing. Okay, let's see. Let the answers come in here. Now, you'll notice, just to talk about Pear Deck for a second, if you've never used Pear Deck, I have this set to anonymous mode, so you didn't have to sign in to join this. So all of these answers are anonymous. So like one of you's a shark, one's a water buffalo, one's a hen, oh, one's a shrimp. I love the shrimp. And that's over here on my screen. That's my teacher dashboard. And then on this screen that you're seeing, there's not even that attached to it. It's completely anonymous. All right, let's see. Pre-teach academic language. Yeah, there's a lot of actually research about the importance of preloading vocabulary, right? Quick checks for understanding during a lesson, modeling organization, showing them how to navigate different things in their digital world. Yeah, make it easy, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, moving on, great ideas. So going back to the idea of choice, I already mentioned this, but the research shows that if you provide choice to students in their academic work and learning tasks, they're going to have a higher perceived competence in completing that task or that academic work. So the strategy that I want to pose to you for this is choice boards. Love choice boards. Let me know in the chat if you use choice boards. I should have made this interactive. I didn't. So just let me know in the chat if you use choice boards or not. Or they're also known as like learning menus. There's different names for choice boards, right? Big fan. Here's an example of one. This is like a tic-tac-toe styled one. I put the link in there so you can click that link and open it. It's a Google Doc. You feel free to copy it and use it if you want. I also have a template of this if you want to use like the tic-tac-toe format. So the middle block is what they're required to do. So basically they just have to show that they learned this content by answering these questions. And then they can choose any of these ways to show that they learned the content. So tons of choice. Now, if that seems intimidating, you don't have to give that many choices. This is an example of one that I have embedded within a self-paced lesson where there's 3 choices. They can make a music playlist, they can do an interview, or they can make a mock social media profile to show what they learned, okay? So you don't have to provide tons of choices. 3 is great, and it's a great starting point. Here is that template, like I said, so you can click that, it'll open the Google Doc, and then you can say file, make a copy, and then just plug your choices in here. Again, not the only type of choice. There's so many different types of choice boards out there, but I really like the tic-tac-toe style. Jennifer says vocabulary choice boards, math center choice boards. Yeah, love the choice boards. So super simple way to add choice to students' learning is making these choice boards. Now, the examples I gave you really focus on choice in how they show what they learned, and that's a really good place to start with choice boards, right? So more of choice in the assessment. You can also provide choice in how students learn. So imagine a choice board like this or like this, right? That is more focused on the content. So you have the option to watch a video, listen to a podcast, read a reading, or, right? You can read and watch the video if that's how you learn best. All right, next strategy that I want to share with you is backed by this research that consistency and clarity is really critical in all learning environments. And if we think about that, we're like, oh, okay. I mean, I get it. I create routine, right? Especially elementary teachers. You guys are like the kings and queens of routine, right? This is how we line up for lunch. This is how we put away our backpacks, right? This is how we sit at our desks. Routine, routine, routine. But us as teachers aren't necessarily used to having a digital space, right? Like a learning management system where you're posting your choice boards and your lessons and your videos, right? So creating that routine and consistency is just as important, if not more important, maybe not more important, I won't go that far, in that digital space as it is in a physical classroom. If you teach fully virtual or even a hybrid model where your students are maybe part in person, part virtual, this becomes even more important, right? So I'm a big fan of having what I call like a digital course home base. So this is like your learning management system, right? If you let me know in the chat if you use Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology, Microsoft Teams, those are some. Seesaw is a really common primary one. Those are all different examples of tools that you could use as like your digital course home base. Matt uses Canvas. Canvas is super popular. I feel like Canvas is taking over the K-12 market right now. Like every school I talk to is like either using Canvas or moving to Canvas, it seems like. So this is that one-stop shop where students get everything for your class. Jody uses Google Classroom. Great. Yeah. So back to this idea of consistency and routine and how important that is. That consistency starts in that digital home base, right? Especially in a virtual classroom. That's the only place that it starts, right? In a physical classroom, it maybe starts when they walk in the physical room and then they sit down at their desk and they open their Chromebook or their laptop, right? Then they're going to that course home base. That's their starting point for everything. So some important things to note about your course home base tool. Ensure students only have one. And what I mean by this is if you share students with other teachers, make sure that all of the teachers are using the same tool. So if you have second graders and you're using Seesaw, make sure that you're using Seesaw, the music teacher's using Seesaw, and the PE teacher's using Seesaw, right? If you teach 7th grade and your students have 6 different teachers throughout the day, you can't have 6 different things for each class that 7th grader is having. You need to use the same tool. So consistency amongst your school as much as you possibly can, but for sure across the teachers that share students. Make sure that that is super duper organized. You can do things like using icons and emojis to provide visual cues. I always use like a calendar emoji to show due dates. A star shows what we're doing today, right? So when they see the star emoji, they know that that's what they're doing today. Using naming conventions. So making sure if you're organizing by unit or module or lesson, you're having the same titles on all of your sections, on all of your lessons within those sections, right? And even thinking about formatting, the color scheme you use the color scheme, the fonts, the design, the look to create that routine and consistency, okay? And you have to teach this, right? All right, I'm going to skip past this one so we can talk about the value bucket and then we will wrap up. But if you want to, when you get the slides, you can come back and look at this. Next strategy is the idea of creating self-directed learners. And I talk a little bit about some ideas of how you can do that. I want to note that another way to create self-efficacy and set your students up for success is to create videos, right? Because they don't have to rely on that 2 minutes that you were standing up in front of the class to remember every single detail of what you told them. They can always go back and watch the video. So if they get to a point where they're confused and you're not there to help them, or another adult isn't there to help them through that confusion, they can go, oh, I can go watch that video again. It has all my instructions in it. So you'll see some overlap here with the strategies. All right, final bucket is this idea of value. This one shouldn't be a super surprise, right? We know that kids need to find value in a learning task in order to really be engaged. So not super big, like, you know, knowledge breaking information, brain breaking information. So students are more likely to engage when the content is related to their own lives or sparks interest. You'll also see in the research this idea of cost, and this really gets into economics. Anybody take economics in college? I did. This idea of opportunity cost, that do students think the cost of doing a task outweighs the benefits of doing it, right? This is where choice comes in. If you give them choice, they're gonna have different options to choose and say, oh, this choice is worth doing this task right now, right? So some strategies for creating value. I'm going to skip past that just because we're short on time. Choice boards again, right? Choice is so important to creating value and piquing students' interest. So use those choice boards. It helps with both of those engagement buckets. Creating self-directed learners. We didn't talk about that, but this comes in here as well. If your students are self-directed, they're motivated, they're self-starters, they're going to be able to find interest in things that they wouldn't be able to find otherwise. I had a chemistry teacher, a middle school chemistry teacher, tell me just a few weeks ago, how do I make atoms interesting to 7th graders, right? And I'm like, that's hard, atoms, molecules, right? Like that is a hard one. And like they need to learn about isotopes or whatever, you know, like how do I make that interesting? There are some topics that like our standards say we have to teach that are hard to make interesting to middle school, high school, elementary school kids. If you build self-directed learners, they're going to be able to find that interest, right? So that's another strategy here. Strategy 3 for value is inquiry-based learning. Now, I find that this can be really daunting and overwhelming to a lot of teachers because a lot of inquiry-based learning, like project-based learning, for example, is big, right? Most project-based PBL type lessons take a lot of time to plan, a lot of time to implement. So I like to tell teachers, start with a low entry inquiry strategy. And the one that I really love is called a Wonder Day or Wonder Week project, depending upon, you know, elementary, you'll probably do more of a Wonder Day. Middle school, high school, you might do more of a Wonder Week. This is an idea from John Spencer. There is a link here to an article that talks about it, a video that introduces it, and it's just so easy. You basically just tell kids, pick something that you wonder about and go research it. And you can say, pick something that you wonder about that has to do with X topic or X content if you need to. And then just let them go explore, right? They're picking it. It's going to be interesting to them because they're the ones picking the wonder. If you go to, let me just back up here a sec. If you go to this website at the bottom, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a place where you can put your email in and he will email you all sorts of resources, lesson plans, ideas to get you started on this. All right, so in summary, just wrapping up here and then we'll do our book draw. We looked at 3 buckets. We have the belongingness bucket, the self-efficacy bucket, and the value bucket. I gave you strategies in each of those buckets. So in belongingness, we talked about teacher-made videos. Self-efficacy, we talked about choice boards, creating routine and consistency, creating self-directed learners, and also videos come back into play here. So a double bang for your buck. And then, the value bucket, we talked about choice boards again. So that came back, creating self-directed learners again. So you could start to see a theme here, right? And then inquiry-based learning as the final strategy. So you'll see here, I'm going to skip past that these buckets kind of build, right? And that's why I did it in the order that I did it. If you feel like you're not doing great with belongingness, start there. You're not going to get very far with anything else in your classroom unless you have your students feeling like they belong, that sense of belonging, right? So start there. Once you feel like you've tackled it, then tackle self-efficacy. Once you've tackled that, then really start tackling value. They build on each other, and a lot of the same strategies build and work in multiple buckets, like self-directed learners, like videos, like choice boards. All right, so real quick, and then we'll do our drawing. I'm just curious, did any of these strategies really seem interesting to you and something that you want to try? You can drag your little green dot over to the strategy. And did I give you more? I give you 3 green dots. So you can drag 1, you could drag 2, you could drag 3. If there's a strategy that really sounded interesting and something that you want to try today. We've got several teacher-made videos. We've got 3 self-directed learners, several on choice boards, and a couple on inquiry-based learning. Interesting. It seems like I think the teacher-made videos is number 1. I love that. Obviously, I'm a big fan of teacher-created videos because there is a lot of research that backs the importance of that. All right. If you don't win the book drawing, I have the Kindle ebook of my book at $2.99 through tomorrow. Just FYI, the link is right here that you can go. So $2.99 through Wednesday. And drum roll, Matt, will you please pick a number between 2 and 7 for me? And that will be our winner, whoever's on that number of my spreadsheet. 5. Jen Finnerty, are you on here? You are. Must be present to win, and you are. All right. So Jen, you are the winner. I will either, it looks like you chose paperback and you have an address, so I will mail you a copy. Woohoo! Be looking for that in the mail. All right. As I told you, here is the link to the slides. The 3 slides after this one are all of the research that I cited, some links to some different research. Matt is unmuting you right now. So if you want to ask questions, feel free. I know, sorry, we're a few minutes over time, but I will stick around. If you do have questions, I would love to answer them. You can always add questions into the chat or Q&A as well. And thank you guys for joining. As Matt said, I know your time is very precious and limited, so I really appreciate you joining, and hopefully you found some good ideas.
Thanks so much, Lindy. And folks, if you're still in the webinar, most of you have the ability to unmute yourself. Just click that little microphone button in the lower left. If something resonated with you, or if you have questions for Lindy, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Jen has no microphone. No worries. You can always add it into the chat too, or the Q&A.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks to everyone who joined us today. Thank you, Lindy, for sharing your expertise. Once again, PD credit emails to evaluate this session for PD credit will go out within 24 to 48 hours. And we will also post a recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel with active links so that you can learn more about the content that Lindy shared, even find out more about her book, and take a look at the slides and all the links that are embedded in there.
And so they have the link to the slides, and then I just changed the Pear Deck to student paste, and I'll leave it open. So if anybody does watch this as a recording, you can enter the code just like I said, and you can follow along and do all the interactive prompts and stuff. It's kind of a nice way to watch like an hour recorded webinar. You know, it gives you like something to do while you're watching.
Lindy, you're teaching the way we hope our teachers can also teach.
That's what I hope. Model. I'm all about
model. Love it. Thank you all very much for spending your time. And Lindy, thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you.